Yep. Hey, Facebook, how's everybody doing? Give me a few seconds. I just want to kind of invite some people on here if I can. I'm also in the process of trying to get my brother online. I'm so very excited because me and my brother don't do many things together, but in this case, we're going to talk about something different. We're going to talk about branding and identity, and we're going to talk about how they intertwine with one another and the importance of each. So I'm very excited about that. Like I said, this is a something different for us because we don't we although we try, we're um, always so busy in life, never able to really catch up. So this is a treat for me because, like I said, I get to talk to my brother, and anytime I get to talk to my brother is pretty special. Detav is the president of TV1 in New York City. And so you can imagine his schedule. Um, just imagine how busy he really is. And so we're going to sit here. I'm going to try and get him online if I can. Um, Give me just a second. Facebook is being just a tad bit difficult and it's not allowing me to bring him in. So let's see here. Let me see. Yeah, I brought my brother on.
There you
Hey,
go.
Daytal, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, man? How you
That
feeling?
was, I'm doing awesome. That was a little chore.
All good. Technology. Just dealing with technology.
Man, modern technology is harder than what it's put out to be. So
Sure.
no, I'm excited to talk to you. I said my brother's really busy, so I don't always get to talk to him. He's
Nah.
always halfway around the country half the time.
Yeah, true story. Well, never too busy for you. But I am fresh off the plane coming from Atlanta, so trying to make sure that I'm as awake as you are.
That's what I know. You still there?
There we go. Yeah, I
Yeah.
lost you for a second, but I'm
Yeah,
here.
I lost you for a minute. Okay. Good stuff. So I wanted to talk to you about branding and identity because I know that there is an intertwine between the two. And when I talk, I'm always talking about the spiritual side of things in life. And I want people to understand. I always talk to them and I tell them, that there's a practical side that, God, we always wait for God to do something, but nine times out of 10, God is waiting for us to do something. And so I understand that we're moving in a different area, but at the same point, there is an intertwine because people have to get in a sense build their brand or build their name so that they're understood, so that people can see and understand who they are. So first, tell my friends and everybody a little bit about yourself.
All right. So Detavio Samuels, a little brother to Michael Samuels. Currently, I work at Urban One. Urban One is the number one media company focused on urban audiences, and so we have television, radio stations, digital platforms, live events, social, all of that. At that company, I have the honor of running our digital media company. So I run digital for brands you may know, such as TV One, Ricky Smiley, Tom Joyner, etc. Bossip Global Grind. And then I also run a creative agency that does a bunch of work for brands that work with the media company. So those are my two roles there. I'm originally from Colorado. Grew up underneath my big brother, this wonderful knucklehead on the other side of the phone.
Yeah, no, I told you he's well established, very, very, very smart, even though he won't tell you himself. But I'm very proud of everything that he's done. I mean, just
Thank you,
the
man. It
things
means
that
a
he
lot.
has done in his side. So you guys ask where I go to when I'm looking for information. I go to my brother because he is a not just an entrepreneur, but he is set in the aspect of helping young men and women to understand who they are so they can become all that they can be through branding, advertising, marketing, and the whole nine yards. So
Absolutely.
find him online, help my brother out.
Come
He
check me out.
come check him out. So um, you ran through two of my questions before we even got anywhere, but tell my
Okay.
friends and my friends out here what branding really is.
So for me, branding is essentially the process of creating a framework for how you will express yourself to the world. Brands, whether they be people, companies, etc., are made up of all these things. However, in order for people to know who you are, to own and occupy space in somebody's mind, the brand has to be kind of laser focused on what that is. And so for me, branding is just all the work that goes into um, simplifying your message before you give it to the wild. Because once you put it in the wild, you can't do anything with it. But for you, you're just trying to, it's an organizing framework for who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Yeah, so um, with all that, why is branding important in not just your area, but when you're thinking about my area where you're looking at ministers, preachers alike, iterant ministers, evangelists, those type of things, when they're building their websites, when they're putting out their marketing, why is someone like you so important to us?
Yeah, I mean, I think it at its most simplistic, I think branding simplifies things too. When do I call you? Right? What's going on in my world? When do I know that, hey, it's time for me to pick up the phone to call Michael Samuels? And so, why I think it's important for pastors and other people to make sure that they're clear on what their brand is, because two things. One, you need to know who you are. You need to know who you are, what you do, why you do it, and how you do it. That's just core to who you are, your business model, and what you do. So being able to crystallize it into a short story or one page is really important. Two, the marketplace needs to know who you are. In your line of work, in terms of being a pastor, there's thousands of pastors out there. When do I choose to call Michael Samuels? What's going on in my church or in my community where I go, oh, you know who's the right pastor for this job? Michael Samuels. And so it's important for us to give our brand to the world so that the world can know when they need to tap into us.
Okay, and so you said something really, really key that I grabbed there that I've been really trying to hone on to that people don't understand. And that's identity. That's getting to know themselves and who they are. And so if they don't know who they are, then how can that versus branding really misappropriate or misapply who or what they are?
Yeah, I mean, even right now, you see, even the brands who know who they are, when they communicate themselves to the wild, is what I call it, to the masses can still misinterpret it, right? So if I'm super clear on who I am, when I hand it to you, the masses still misinterpret it. Imagine how much they can misinterpret your identity and who you are when you're not being clear in terms of how you're communicating it. And so for me, it's just you can only try to control one side of the equation, and that side is what you're telling people who you are. The inability to do that successfully, I think, causes opportunity for lots of mistakes and messiness.
And that's key. Now, please understand that I'm not saying that you know God's not going to open up doors, and that's the focus of where we're at and who we are. But you only have one impression. You only get to make it once. And when you go out there and you represent yourself, um, you have to be key and focused on who you are as well as who and what you're representing. Um, they never sent out, the king never sent out apostles that did not know who they were, that did not know their identity and did not know who they were representing. Because if they didn't, then it would really, really mess some things up and not understanding why they were there for the king, why the king sent them in the first place, and that's their main key. And so, um,
Yeah, can I piggyback on that real
yeah, yeah,
quick?
yeah. Go ahead.
I actually just think that being clear on your branding will actually open doors, right? So the clearer I am on when's the right time to tap into Michael Samuels, I think the more opportunity you give people to call you.
No, exactly. And I wanted people to see that because they see, and where I'm at, either people get either really weird with the aspect of their spirituality. I'm not saying it's all any part of it's wrong, but I know a lot of ministers where they've sat there and said, "Hey, I'm just God's going to open up doors. I'm going to do what I'm going to do." And if He does open up the door, um, did he tell you to go ahead and just walk through it and do it, or to just sit on your butt? But when you get through that door, how are you going to represent yourself? And like I
Sure.
said, you only get that one time to really make that first impression. Um,
I think how is super important. So my core framework actually for brand building is who are you, what do you do, why do you do it, and how you do it. And the truth is, a lot of brands, what we do is the same. It's also true that sometimes the why can be the same, but how you go about doing something is always a way that you can differentiate yourself from everybody else in the space.
and so what you're saying is there is definitely a complete correlation between the two. And
Yeah,
the two
absolutely.
worlds and how we see things. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on because I can say it all day. And I can say, hey, look, we have to think about how we do this. But if we don't do it, I mean, uh, we live in two worlds in aspect. And so if we don't, you know, carry ourselves with the utmost respect, and first of all, not waste anybody's time because time is money. So when we go in there, we can't be fumbling over our words. We can't be trying to figure out what we're trying to represent. But go in there and know I'm representing the king. This is what I'm representing. This is why, and this is why you need to call me, invite me, send, or give me 15 minutes to talk to your congregation, or even 5 minutes to your congregation. Yes, they'll feel the spirit and understand the spirit, but if you don't know who you are, either way across, you're going to be wasting somebody's time.
Yep,
And
absolutely.
so, um, in your eyes, how would you see and take it to both a spiritual and a regular aspect, but how would you see, correlating and intertwining those two together?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in general, um, forgive me, I think that in general, um, the framework is always the same. So whether I'm talking to people about their personal lives, or talking to people about their spiritual lives, or talking to people about their careers, the the framework is always the same. Which for me again goes back to if you can know four things: who you are, what you
Hold on
do.
real quick. Hold on real quick.
Yep.
If you're sitting here watching, you need to get out a pen and paper, and I'm gonna tell you now because he's giving you free knowledge. I'm just letting you know. Sorry, go ahead.
You good? It's my from my point. It's there's four things: who you are, what you do, why you do it, and how you do it. Um, one of those four have to be truly differentiating. One of those four have to be something that truly sets you apart from all of your competition. All four don't have to be different. All four tell a story. And as long as one of those elements is differentiating, then the whole story becomes different. And so for me, whether you're a pastor or trying to plot out your career or building a brand, those are the four things you always have to know. And I see Lauren Love Carter coming in, and I agree with you, Lauren. It's also nice if one of those things has an emotional component. Oftentimes, the emotional component can be found in the why. The why is where the purpose lies.
Hmm.
And oftentimes, purpose can be super emotional.
Good, good stuff. Is there anything else you want to tell them?
Uh, Let me think. No, not on that part.
Okay, good, good stuff. No, I'm gonna throw in a little plug though. If you're looking for a branding expert or someone to help you understand who and what you are, um, definitely on the spiritual side, I got you. But if you're looking, and even on that side, look up my brother online. It's Detavio Samuels, just like mine, and he's got a small business on the side as well that deals with nothing but branding and marketing, and that's all he does. That's all his team does. And I'm gonna tell you now, they are phenomenal. And my cousin just popped online, and I'm gonna plug him too because he's done some really good artwork for me. My emblem, my logo, and whatsoever. And it's Collier Consulting. You're looking for someone that can draw and hook you up. You need to go see my cousin Kenneth. He's online too, Kenneth Collier, because he's good at what he does. Both of those men together, I'm telling you. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like putting dynamite in a little pot. It's going to explode. They'll get you going.
I
So,
appreciate you. I'll give a shout out to Kenneth as well. I mean, you're doing a lot of talking about branding and identity, and one of the biggest pieces that comes out of a branding exercise is often the brand identity. What are the logos? What are the marks? What are the names? Right. So identifying that story, and then to your point, making sure that you have somebody on the other side of the table, a designer, or somebody who can really bring that story to life, such as a Kenneth Collier.
man, I appreciate that. He's spitting knowledge, and I'm telling you, it's something that we all have to know and understand. We get so focused on just the spiritual aspect and say, "Hey, God gave me a call," but how am I going to go about it? And how am I going to
Yeah.
look professional? How am I not going to look like Boo Boo the Fool? And how am I going to go to a networking event, and when someone asks me what I do, how am I going to mumble around my words for the next 20 minutes and waste their time? Or am I
Yeah, man, I think that I always people oftentimes get caught up on the spiritual only, and I always tell people I'm a big believer in the supernatural, and the supernatural got two parts to it: the super, which is God, but then the natural, right? And I don't think that you can get to where you want to
spitting
go if you're
knowledge?
not doing both sides of the equation. And so God has given us so many gifts, so many resources, so many books, people like you who are out here spreading word. And so it's important that, yes, we tap into God and access the Spirit, but it's also important that we give that Spirit something to bless and something to touch. And so identifying the tools and the resources and the things in the natural so that we can be well prepared as you're recommending. I can't hear you, Mike.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I don't know what happened. I know modern technology drives me to drink, and I don't drink. But anyway, um, no, what I was saying is that we have to understand who we are as I don't know how far I went, so I'm going to go back. We need to understand
Yeah.
who we are as a son, and we have to understand our sonship. But within that, we also have to understand who we are as ambassadors to Christ. And so we have to understand what an ambassador really does. But I'm telling you, when the apostles were sent, they knew who they were. They knew
Hmm.
why they were sent. They knew that the power and authority that they have derives from the one who sent them, the king. And so when they went in, they said, "Hey, I'm going in for King so and so. This is his land. These are the rules. This is what, and they're there to clean up. And I look at it this way because this is how branding and everything else intertwines with what we're trying to do. But as we go in, we understand that we're first sent. Now we have to figure out why we were sent and everything else. And that's going to come with that branding component and everything else so we can apply it with our, and I'll say, ambassadorship or sonship, and we can carry across a very fluent and a very vibrant message to the masses. You know, if it
Yeah,
was a
I
perfect
mean, one of the
world,
things you're
you know, branding and everything. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of the things you're
Go ahead.
talking about is that God has given each. One of the things you're talking about is that God has given each one of us specific gifts, right? And that's often, again, a key thing and a key differentiator in terms of your brand story. Your gifts may show up in your what, your why, or your how.
Hmm.
And to your point, the job is not to say God has given me these gifts. Let me sit back and just pray on them. The job is to say God has given me these gifts. Let me unwrap them and pray that He blesses that work.
Exactly. And so that goes along with exactly what I said when I said we're waiting for him and he's waiting on us.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things that God has been speaking to me in 2019, he said that if if you move, I'll move. And so many of us don't understand or we take it too far when God says that I've given you everything that you need. I've given you everything you need to succeed. However, that's going to take a human component in our own minds to say, hey, okay, he gave me these gifts. Now, how am I going to maximize these gifts so I can
Absolutely.
provide wealth for my family, so I can do this, so I can do this. I'm going to be honest. I mean, working for someone, you're never going to have the riches that you're supposed to have because you work for a paycheck, and that's why so many entrepreneurs are out there. I'm not saying it's wrong. Don't take that the wrong way. That might be where we're at right now, but I'm telling you that as long as we're looking at the other aspect of we're making someone else rich. But I know that God has put businesses in my brother's mind. He's put businesses in my cousin's mind. That's why he's so successful today. He's put businesses in my mind, and if we follow that blueprint and we put our mindsets in the aspect of understanding who we are and applying a branding method, that's why it's so important to contact, you know, people of that nature who are really good at branding, i.e., my brother and my cousin. Haha, free plug. Um, and because they think in a different level than or a different area than many of us think. And we take those, we apply them, and yes, God gave us everything, but I'm also, very important in saying that He gave it to us, but now we must align with it. And that goes with everything in your gift. Yes, Kenneth, that's 100% correct. As in understanding your purpose, we're cultivating our gifts. So, um, Datav, in your own and you said a lot. You said a mouthful. I'll be honest with you. You know, I could make a nice little huge Facebook post off of that right there if we could have just left it as it is. But if you were to say anything to the people right now, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, I love everything that you're building this around, which is at the end of the day, our life is about purpose and impact, and part of that is doing God's will and doing God's work, and that understanding that if we're going to do that work to the best of our ability, there are tools such as marketing and branding, understanding your identity that can help you be more purposeful and more effective. At the end of the day, for me, life is all about being effective. And so I love that you pulled this together. I love that you brought me on for a second to hang out with you. I don't know. This may be our first time ever doing anything like this.
It is our first time, but it's not going to be
Okay.
our last time.
Yeah, not the last. Amen.
This is one of the things that he put in my heart because me, I'm not a Facebook Live person or a video person.
Right.
You can't take back what you said.
Right,
Um,
right, right.
and I did this first with my friend. with my friend Philip, and I don't know if he's online, and we talked about sonship. And this is one of the things that, God put on my heart is to begin to talk just, and I call it, I don't have a name for it. It's just like a coffee table type thing. Like if we were sitting across having a cup of coffee, just spitting knowledge back
Yeah.
and forth, and that's what he's called me. He's given me other things that I'm going to begin to implement, because social media is becoming such a huge area in life right now, um, in the aspect of just, I mean, everything in itself. Today's generation is really on social media. Um, you know,
Yeah.
they're not doing anything else. I mean, you watch some of these kids, I watch kids at work that are on Facebook more than they probably are in the bathroom. It's like every second they're on that phone. What's going on in Twitter? What's going on in Instagram? And I don't know if they're looking at Instagram or Snapchat more, but they're what's on this. I don't think Facebook is as popular anymore, but I remember when Facebook was the crave, but there's still some old folks like me that like Facebook. And I'm trying to get my followers up on YouTube so I can use YouTube more often. But yeah, um, with everybody
I
that's
love YouTube.
online, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say I love YouTube as an outlet for you. It's definitely my belief for brands who want to have an impact in the video space definitely need to be in YouTube. So I love that you're doing that. And I also love that you started this, even without a name. I think oftentimes we get caught up on the little things, right? Like, we're like, hey, I don't have a name for this thing yet, or hey, I don't have a website for this thing yet. Oftentimes, I think they're just excuses to actually launching and getting the thing going. So, love that you chose to just launch it and get it going. I think that God can speak to you in the midst of the journey, right? And so, instead of waiting and waiting and waiting, I love that you just got started and you'll figure it out along the way.
Well,
Happy to help in any way that I
look
can.
at it this way: where would the Israelites be if they didn't move or they didn't step?
Yeah,
They
yeah, you
didn't
just
know
gotta
what was
go.
going. They didn't know what was going on in the end of it. They didn't know
Yeah.
what was ahead of them, and that's the big thing with everybody out there. But with the
But
few
that's
people
actually
that
sorry,
no, go
last thing.
ahead.
That's
No,
actually the
you're
real
good.
faith walk. The real faith walk is to say, I only have this one part of the puzzle, but I'm gonna step out and believe that by the time I need to get to the next part of the puzzle, God would have let me know what it is. I always talk about Abraham. It's not important to listen to what God said. It's important to listen to what God is saying, right? So all Abraham knew was go kill your son, right? He just had to go on that faith walk. He then had to keep listening to see what else God had to give him, right? Which was ultimately don't kill your son, kill the ram. And so I just love the fact that you got started without knowing what steps two, three, four, five, and six were going to be. And I think that's the real definition of a faith walk.
Wow, that's huge. Now you're gonna get me to preaching, and I'm trying not to preach on Facebook because everybody's got it. We got enough Facebook preachers on here. Um, but it is a good avenue. But that's it in itself. A lot of times we're
Okay.
waiting because, and you're right, it is a cop out. It's a cop out for me to say why I haven't done this or why I haven't done that. And I'm have to say, I've fallen into that same trap. Is I haven't moved because all the pieces weren't together. But one thing God doesn't do is He doesn't dump 100-piece puzzle in front of you and put it all together. But He
That's
dumps
right.
the puzzle in front
That's
of
right.
you, and it's like, put this piece in. Okay, you got that. Now put this piece in. You got that. Now put this piece
That's
in.
right.
So I'm going to ask if anybody has any questions for my brother on here. Go ahead and type away.
And Kenny don't count.
Yeah, because he's typing a lot in there. He's using my space to throw his knowledge out.
Hey, seize that moment. If
But
Lamont is on his count,
yeah, Lamont is on there too. Oh, my wife said something, Daytime. She
mm,
said, "What is one thing
I
you have
see it.
learned in life, business, that you wish you had known or done when you started out in your own life or
Um,
business?"
I kind of have two thoughts. One is that I just believe now in my grown up age that life is iterative. So I think when I was younger, I was a much bigger planner. And what happened specifically in starting companies, I had a couple of companies fail because we didn't have the resources to go through an iterative process. And what I learned was there was no way that I could figure out what the idea actually needed to be until I had given it to the world. And then once the world had it, I needed to be able to iterate on it to create. And so I wish I'd have learned that lesson a long time ago. I probably would have started a bunch more things or launched a bunch more things. It's a very freeing thought now that I don't have to get things right the first time. And the other piece that I was going to say that kind of ties into that is when I was younger, I had very set goals. I wanted to be in business school by this age, a CMO by this age, very clear cut goals. And now, like, I believe in the combination of goals and direction. So I still think goals are important because if Michael Samuels says he wants to be a millionaire in 2 years versus a millionaire in 10 years, he's going to make very different decisions. Michael Samuels, who wants to be a millionaire in 2 years, probably isn't going to go work for anybody. He's just going to try to figure out how he can launch his own business and get to millions of dollars in 2 years. Whereas the other Michael Samuels, the 10-year one, may take, may work for 5 years and then jump out. Anyways, I still believe that's necessary, but I've also learned again that it's impossible to figure out how God wants this thing to look. And so no matter how I've imagined the things, they typically don't actually end up working out like that. And so now my goal is to set goals so that I have movement, but to be directionally accurate. To know that wherever I'm going is probably not the actual end place, but my job is just to be pointed in the direction so that when, to your point about the puzzle pieces, God gives me the next puzzle, I can see whichever direction is and then move to attack that piece.
So what you're saying is that man's own thinking can create its roadblocks, if I say it in a shorter version kind of thing. But the faith walk is where you begin to focus and things begin to build.
Yeah, I think that captures a lot of it.
Okay. No, I get that because it's true. And it was most of my, stupid thinking that, held back a lot of the different blessings and the thing that God is bringing forth, And I mean, he says that himself. He says, my thoughts are not your thoughts and your ways are not my
That's
ways.
right.
And when we put our 2 cents in is when we begin to mess things up. Um, Lamont said, would you say that the biggest thing in business is that you have to do it and worry about fear and failure?
I don't know that I would say it's the biggest thing, only because I don't know that there's one biggest thing. But do I think it's a huge thing? Absolutely. I think that the job in business is to minimize risk, to um, take to have the most amount of impact with the least amount of resources, and execute it in a way that you minimize the most amount of risk. And so I think that as a business leader, you can't be caught up on fear. You solve fear by coming up with ways to minimize risk. Oh, if I do this, this will happen. Here's my plan B. Or hey, if I do this, this will happen. So I shouldn't do that. I'm only going to spend $1 on it instead of $10. If you play that game right, then you shouldn't be afraid. It's a game of bets. It's like going to the casino. You're placing your money on certain strategies, certain people, certain products you're betting on. And so scared money don't make money. So if you're gonna place your bet, you reduce the risk and then you go as hard as you can.
Okay. I just got a text from a friend. I'm not going to say no names because they're watching, but they didn't want me to give a name. But they wanted me to ask you. So, would you say that fear is what's holding people back? So, if that's the case, what's your suggestion for overcoming it?
Oh, how do you overcome fear? You just go. Um, there's a phenomenal book called Flinch, and the core idea behind Flinch is that fear is an outdated concept. That fear was created back, let's just pretend, okay, let's just say in the caveman days. Fear was created in the caveman days where people had to be worried about being chased by, eaten by lions and tigers and bears. So if you heard the grass rustling, it was important for you to know that when the grass rustles, a predator might be there who might try to bite me, right? That's what fear was. Fast forward to 2019, we're not worried about our lives being attacked by lions, tigers, and bears. Right? The worst thing that's going to happen you walking down the street is that you're going to trip, but you still have the outdated emotional response. The truth is, the worst case scenario that can happen for many of our decisions is actually not that bad. So the thing that we're afraid of and that we're avoiding is way smaller than the thing that we could actually gain if we do it. So, anyways, I know it's not easy to just start, but I'm a big believer that the first and the best thing you can ever do is just start and then figure it out along the way. I'm not saying that's an easy thing to do, but I think it's always the right thing to do. Just start, pray if you're truly praying and in faith and activated in faith. Then you believe that God's got you no matter what. So that should remove your fear. How else can you remove your fear? Um,
I
don't
like the
put
fact.
don't. Okay.
No, go ahead. I was just saying. I just like the fact that you just said, "Just do it," because that's one of
Yeah.
the biggest things in my life. And I heard someone put it this way: we're always asking, God to purge our flesh or to align our flesh. But my friend said that's not his job. That's your job. And so that falls right aligned with just do it. Just, you're going
Yeah.
to have to make a conscious decision that your flesh becomes subjective to the spirit that's inside of you. And it's a
Yeah.
decision that you
Absolutely.
make.
Absolutely.
Um, Lamont said, from a biblical aspect, how would you apply fear to branding or expanding your business since the Bible says, I should fear no man?
Yeah. I was
Um,
gonna say fear is not of God. Go
I
ahead.
think you just answered that yourself, Lamont. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Fear no man. Fear's in the Bible 365 times, or no, don't fear is in the Bible 365 times. So, I take that as a fact that first, it's very important that we know that because he took 365 times for us to say it. And then two, I also take into the fact that he knew something about it. And if you read the Bible, he does say, "Hey, I knew you was going to go through this. I knew you was going to deal with this, but I'm telling you, do not fear. Do not be afraid." Yeah, my cousin's making me laugh too. Do not be
Right.
afraid. And that's the whole aspect. And I'm going to be honest with you on a spiritual basis, Lamont. That's one of the hardest concepts that we have to come up with. And as you know, in speaking in faith and those type of things, that's one of the ambushes or the attacks of the enemy that he tries to do to keep us from moving forward and becoming the men and women that God has called us to be. In whatever avenue we've been called to do, whatever gift, the enemy uses our fears against us to prevent us from moving forward. And so I guess
Yeah.
um, if you don't know who you are, if you don't brand yourself or whoever quite well, then you have to understand that that's one of the fears that the enemy is using against you.
Yeah, since I've been rambling and you've been given a shortcut, I'll do your shortcut, which is I think one, fear is not of God. Two, being people of Christ is about territory expansion, right? So we should be territory. I mean, sorry. So we should be fearless as it relates to increasing our territory, because that's what God has called us to do.
Amen. Amen. Are there any more questions? Hey, Philip, I see you just popped on. Um, I guess not. I'm like I said, I'm gonna throw it out there one more time. You know, if you need, I'm gonna call him a broadcaster, but my brother is really, he's a servant leader and he's an architect. I'll put it that way. He's a mind architect. And if you're looking for a good brander or someone to brand you or your business, you need to look my brother up and see how he can help you because he definitely will. As well as my cousin Kenneth, I guess you could call them the duo because you've got to have that type of advertising to set up the branding as well. Um, so contact them. So Chris, I'm gonna have to get you on one of these days because I like that comment about I think fear is often misrepresented by or misinterpreted by us, and I'm gonna have to get you on because that was one of the discussions I wanted to have against fear. So I know exactly who I'm gonna call online about that one. Um, but hey, I'm telling you, fear is not of God, fear is of the enemy. So anything that's crawled into you that tells you to prevent what you know God has called you to do, you need to kick it to the side. Excuse me, I say like a redheaded stepchild and just keep on moving. Because if God has not given us the spirit of fear, but He has given us power, then and that's from my cousin Kenneth. So it's from the Bible, but my cousin Kenneth just popped up what I would probably be looking for at this moment. And so
Mhm.
you get one chance. You get when you're going to build and talk to people, you don't always get a second chance to build to represent um, yourself. And if you go in looking like Boo Boo the Fool, you might have just messed up that one moment in time. So you guys, I love you guys. You know, look up my brother, look up Kenneth. Do you have a
Yeah,
website,
can
Daytop, still, or
everything I am is just Detavio. So Detavio on Facebook, Instagram, Gmail, everything. Super easy to find. Thanks for having me, big bro. Love you, man. Proud of you.
love you
Be
too?
back anytime you need me and can be on this podcast. And then if you tap Kenny or myself, I'll tap Lamont. He's got all the talent and the track stars and the athletes. So you can have a total family collaboration. Thanks for having me, man. Love you.
See, Lamont, you got your plug. Don't say
Yeah, I
we
said,
ain't
let
do
me give
nothing
it to
for you.
him.
Love you. Thanks, Daytop.
All
Hey,
right,
I know
bro.
you're
Peace.
tired. Go rest up.
Thank you, man. Love you.
Hey, have a
Peace.
good one, guys.